Today is my backwards video about client testimonials. Client testimonials help people searching for an advisor understand what it's like to work with me. As an industry, advisors and firms talk about building strong relationships with clients. As an industry, advisors and firms talk about customized, personalized planning. So we share positive client feedback to support these claims. What we don't talk about really is the advisor experience. So if I'm building strong relationships with a client, sure, they're going to be willing to share a testimonial about how working with me changed their situation. What also should be true in a relationship is that the client changed something for me. Strong relationships are a two-way street. If I'm truly doing customized planning, the client should have an impact on how I plan. Nobody wants a cookie cutter plan. So how do I know how to customize your plan for you? Some aspects of your plan are technical, they're numerical, and I can't change those things for anything. But the pieces of your plan that are customizable, how do I get to those pieces? How do I choose? And how do I deliver that information to you? So the backwards video is my experience of working with a family who has written a testimonial for me. And you can read their testimonial over on my blog. So I've worked with the parents and two adult children for about the last 8 years. And the parents plan. They're financially comfortable, they've saved more than they need, and they're going to leave a significant estate. Prior to planning, neither of them had a visual of how much surplus they had. They don't want to leave a significant estate. So if we don't plan actively to disperse that, a large estate is going to happen. And so they did have a desire to give. And prior to planning, they had been giving, but the giving itself didn't have a plan. It was a little bit unconscious. And now it's become a more conscious piece of their kind of month-to-month life, and they're feeling a little bit more active in that area. And so for me, seeing that change in behavior once I had conveyed the plan, specifically using language that they had used, was a confirmation of the value of taking the time to customize both the technical inputs to the software and the communication about the outcomes. The second thing that happened with the parents was there was a time when they became concerned that one of the products that we were using wasn't the right fit. So these are clients that I've been working with since I was at my previous firm, and I was selling product as part of my role. So we had a product, made sense at the time. We spent some time prior talking about it. And then a few years later, they were concerned that it wasn't the right fit, and they actually regretted the purchase. And so the learning in that for me was how to approach that. We thoroughly reviewed their needs. We reviewed the product. One of the sticking points was actually how they were saving money in this product. We had started with monthly contributions because that seemed to make sense given the cash flow in. And as it turned out, the client hated that. And so we changed the contributions to once a year, and that solved a lot of the concern and regret. And so that was a technical fix. So for me, that really reinforced the discipline of asking the right questions and listening to the answers. But then the questioning continued. And the client booked another meeting to discuss this product. And while I was preparing for that meeting, I really focused on thinking about the client and what had been said, what was needed, not just about this product, but in my total relationship with this client. And after a lot of thought and definitely some trepidation, I started that meeting by saying, I don't think your issue is with that product. I have all the information about the product right here, and I'm happy to review it with you again. But I really think your issue is career burnout, and I want to talk to you today about what would happen if you retired today. And that was a really scary statement because I didn't know what was going to happen after that. I didn't know if the client wanted to talk about that. And that's not really what a traditional investment advisor does. So what happened in that meeting and over the next several years confirmed for me that sometimes taking a risk in moving beyond the words that the client's using and saying, I heard you about your initial concern, and I will discuss that single piece with you. And what I want to talk about is the big picture and what's most valuable to you overall. I learned it's a risk, and I learned sometimes it's a risk worth taking. And the third thing that happened for me with this client was I realized at one point that we had very different opinions on a social issue. I knew what I thought about this issue, and I believed that my position was correct. And then I realized that this client was on the opposite side of this issue to me. And that really stopped me. I respect this client for a lot of reasons. And I thought, if somebody that I respect in so many areas can be completely opposite to me in this, maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe there's something I didn't consider. And I have actually had the opportunity to talk to her about this, and it shifted my thinking on this issue, mainly, I guess, around the idea of kind of rightness and wrongness of both sides, actually. And I really value that experience of opening up my thinking about this issue and still holding on to my core values. So it doesn't feel like I gave anything up, or I was, wrong the first time and right the second time. It just opened things up for me. And now I go into conversations with people whose opinions differ greatly from mine, very differently than I did before knowing this client. And the kids. The kids are both 20-somethings. I've known them since they were in their late teens, and I love my kid clients. I have varying numbers of them. When other professionals ask me about my ideal client, or when I hear that advisors should have a niche, I think, I don't want that. I don't believe that would make me a better advisor. And here's why. My kid clients teach me so much. So the older child in this family, quieter than the rest of them, and intimidated by investments. And so I've learned to slow down. I slow down both my explanations and my questions. Because when I slow down and she talks and I listen, then I can tailor my answers to her specific situation. And it's not that I didn't do that before, but my conversations with her made me realize maybe I'm not doing it as well as I could. Maybe I'm not doing it as often as I could. Maybe I'm worried more about my speed than the client's speed. And maybe I need to turn that around. And she also reminds me that clients don't always know how their investments or other assets can be used to help them meet their goals. And that may sound basic. And some advisors are going to think, of course I do that. Do you really? When was the last time you told a client to spend money? When was the last time you calculated how much a client could spend without running out? When was the last time you calculated that before asking them how much they needed? When was the last time you really made it clear that their investments are theirs? That saving today means the ability to spend tomorrow, and tomorrow is now. When was the last time you said to a client, this is what you saved it for? Today's the day. And when was the last time you said to a client, all of those goals that are floating around in your head are possible? And this kid inspires me to practice that skill. And the younger child. We were reviewing his income needs one summer before he went back to university for his second year. And he was listing off his expenses and the estimated costs. And I looked at the list and I said, textbooks? And he said, not buying any. I bought them last year because the prof said we needed them. I didn't use any of them. I found the information in these places. Textbooks are a waste of money. What? I love books. When I study, I need a book. This engineering student who was acing his courses had no need for books? Heck. Not only did I feel old, this kid had just squashed my routine list of questions for students. So months later, I'm talking to another client, late 60s, practicing physician, and he had concerns with his practice. So he had slowed practice down. He had stopped doing some procedures, was focusing more on others. And we had this conversation multiple times over a number of meetings. And his office expenses were eating up more and more of his income. And I had tried to point this out, and we just weren't quite kind of meeting each other in that conversation. And finally, in one meeting, he started by saying, I think I'm just working to pay my receptionist. And I said, you are. And he said, but I don't want to stop practicing. And I can't, this is the office I need. This is what I need. I can't change anything, and I don't want to stop practicing. And then I hear my ace engineer in the back of my head saying textbooks aren't necessary. And I said, do you really? Are you sure? And then we went through a list of options, and he would say, but I have to pay for this. And I would throw back, do you really? What if you did this? Some of the options were crazy. They were crazy options. But we went back and forth kind of over his whole cost list. And he started thinking, and about 6 months later, he had made a lot of changes. He had combined his office space with a colleague's office space. He was still now practicing the way he wanted to. His receptionist still had a job, and he was taking money home. Now that engineering student has graduated and is working full time. But if you go look at a list of post-secondary expenses, it probably includes textbooks. When we don't question, is this necessary for me and what's possible for me, we miss opportunities. We miss shifts in the landscape and opportunities to respond differently and still get the outcome we want. So when I say I have 18 years of experience as an advisor, it's really important to me that I have 18 years of gaining skills, technical and relational. I don't want just 3 to 5 years of learning that I take and I just repeat those things over and over and over. That's not 18 years of experience. That's kind of 3 to 5 years of experience repeated, almost 4 times now. I don't want to assume that I know what a client wants or needs based on their appearance. I don't want to assume I have the answers for everything right now. I don't want to assume that new information isn't relevant just because I've spent a bunch of thoughtful time coming to a conclusion that's worked in the past. So I do know now why we post client testimonials without talking about the effect that clients have on us, because it's really hard. It was a really interesting exercise to sit down and write out what working with this family has meant for me. If you have a goal that can't seem to find its way into your plan, if you've got questions that haven't been answered yet, or if you would like to squash some long-held planning pattern for me, I would love to hear from you. Contact me directly to book a conversation. I would also love to hear your experience of shifting your thinking or behavior in ways that didn't seem possible until it did. So post those in the comments.